Hi, I'm Paul Stewart from Paul Stewart's Aviation. I'm excited to be with my friend Jeb Brooks.
Well, how to do, everybody? My name's Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. Yeah, you do quite a good Australian accent, Jeb.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. G'day. I'm actually Paul Stewart and I'm currently here in Washington DC, the capital city of the United States, and I'm looking forward to my flight from DCA, Reagan Airport, through to Los Angeles Airport with American Airlines in their Boeing 737-8 MAX.
And literally 3 hours after I filmed this, the 737 MAX was grounded, so instead this will be a review of the 737-800, where many things seem to go wrong, and there's even an interesting ethical dilemma, which I'll mention later. The journey begins at the metro station, which has a very unusual design, with the walls and roof being made up of these concrete rectangles. It actually works really well, and shortly afterwards we were delivered to Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. It was then a short walk to get our bags tagged and pick up our boarding passes. Now, tickets were economy or coach class, but because I hold the equivalent of executive platinum with American, I was allowed into the Admirals Lounge. It was surprisingly average, as I expected that a lot of senior public servants and politicians would pass through there since it's so close to central DC. For comparison's sake, in Canberra, which is Australia's capital city, the airport lounges are amazing, as the airlines are keen to maintain favour with the taxpayer-funded frequent flyers. I should mention that the food displayed here was all complimentary, although you can pay for more substantial food. I grabbed a quick snack, awkwardly filmed the seats trying to avoid as many faces as possible, and sat down and enjoyed the view. A particular highlight for me was this Delta Boeing 757, as we don't have those flying in Australia, or other than a few freighters. There was also this Embraer, I think, and this stubby little Airbus A319 or A318, which looks as graceful and as well proportioned as a cow walking up a flight of stairs. After more grazing and plane watching, our flight was eventually called and we headed to the gate. It was already delayed by an hour because they had to find a spare 737 since the MAX was grounded, as I said before, and eventually boarding began. Now, unfortunately, the flow of passengers was incredibly slow, and I found out afterwards this was because someone had received a whack to the head from some overhead luggage. Fortunately, the damage was nothing major, although an ambulance came and the passenger walked off themselves. Unfortunately, the delay meant that the crew had reached their maximum hours, so we sat and waited as they tried to find more staff. In the meantime, I'll go through my seat 9A in more detail. Now, it's actually a main cabin extra seat, which has a little extra legroom and free drinks. You usually have to pay a little bit extra for these, although it's a perk of having status with a One World subsidiary that American Airlines let you select this seat for free. The seat is fine for my 182cm frame, and importantly it has a good view of the engine, and something I really appreciate is the air vents above you. There's also a power plug below you, and I'll point out that row 10 doesn't actually have a window, so if you're an av geek then definitely avoid this seat. Another flight attendant arrived, who thankfully volunteered to work overtime, and we headed for the runway. I might add that I really like the Americans' livery. The red and blue in the shape of the flag, it goes really well with the silver. Now, coming up are some blurry and shaky views of Washington sights, including Capitol Hill in the distance now, and as we take off, you'll see the Washington Monument in the distance. I'll upload the full takeoff in a separate video. I was a little disappointed that I was sitting on the wrong side and wouldn't see the National Mall. I ended up getting a pretty good view of the Pentagon and Arlington National Cemetery, which you can see down below now. I spent the previous day here and enjoyed wandering around, remembering the sacrifice made by generations before me. Now, both of my grandfathers fought in World War II, although this cemetery is reserved for US citizens, although I did actually read that there was one Australian buried here. An Aussie was on board an American C-47 Dakota, which was shot down in 1942, although the wreckage wasn't found until 1989. They couldn't identify who was who, so they figured the most respectful thing to do was to take all of them to rest in Arlington, knowing that 3 of them were Americans and 1 was an Australian. The view of the setting sun was impressive, although I was keen to check out the in-flight entertainment, which streams to your device. The content was reasonable and included live TV programs and movies. I chose to watch this North American X-15 rocket hurtle through the air, which probably wouldn't be advisable for an anxious flyer. So instead, I settled down and watched this documentary on Great Britain while being distracted by the sunset. As I said before, main cabin extra seats come with free nibbles and drinks, so I went with the Chardonnay. The flight was around 4 hours and I was feeling peckish, so I also purchased this wrap and cookie because, of course, American don't offer complimentary meals anymore. I suppose it's kind of looked similar to the picture. After that, I continued watching Game of Thrones, only to have the person in front of me recline, and because of the design of the seat, it bent and broke my computer's screen. Now, I wasn't really sure who was at fault in this situation. The guy in front was apologetic, and he was well within his right to recline his seat. So maybe it's a flaw in the seat design, so would American take the blame? Or maybe it was my fault for putting the laptop on the tray table, which to me seems like a perfectly normal thing to do. As I said, the guy in front was apologetic and felt terrible, so I wasn't going to demand any compensation from him. Thankfully, I had travel insurance, so they covered the $1,100 repair bill from Apple, except for a $250 excess. Anyway, comment below with who do you think was at fault. I kind of put it down to sort of being no one was really at fault, and in the end of the day there are bigger problems in the world, although it was frankly quite disastrous for this millennial not having a computer for several weeks, especially when I had to catch up on Game of Thrones with the final season approaching. Without a screen to look at, I had to revert back to what used to happen and look out the window. Eventually, the massive lights that is Los Angeles came into view and we landed into LAX. On one hand, it was a reasonably disastrous flight as I had selected it, even though the timing wasn't ideal, to test out the 737 MAX, and obviously that didn't happen. We also left 3 hours late and missed our shuttle bus in Los Angeles, and of course my computer was also smashed. But I guess it's little frustrations like these that only really exist because air travel is now so cheap and accessible. Even with the delays, it's obviously significantly faster and more comfortable than catching a train or driving. And of course, flying over Arlington Cemetery really puts my minor problems into perspective. From a review point of view, it was fine and you can make your own conclusions of the seat and food. It was a standard domestic coach class experience with an okay seat. The lack of an in-flight entertainment screen was really quite pronounced though after my computer broke down, especially for a 4-hour flight. As we come into Los Angeles Airport, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching, and if you enjoy these types of videos, please check out my channel for more of them. There's reviews of Emirates, Qantas, Qatar, BA, Cathay, Japan, LATAM, and many more. Feel free to subscribe and please click the thumbs up button on this video. Also, don't forget to check me out on Instagram and Facebook. And finally, stick around for more bloopers from me attempting to film the intro with fellow aviation YouTuber Jeb Brooks. Thanks for watching.
G'day, mate. No, I'm not. I'm Paul Stewart.
You are.
From Paul Stewart's Aviation, and I'm excited to be with my friend Jeb Brooks.
Well, how to do, everybody? My name.
The hardest part is getting through that with a straight.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. Are we recording?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, are we recording?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paul Stewart from Paul Stewart's Aviation.
Testing, hello.
Hello, g'day.